Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. On today's video, well, it's a Wednesday video, so it's a midweek mini mail call. And this week, it's a part 0 to a C64 Repair-a-thon, one that is going to be coming up at some point in the future. And you can guess why? There's a bunch of C64 boards in this video. So, without further ado, let's get right to it. Okay, so we have a package here, comes from Germany, and it comes from Henning. I think I know what this is. There is a note here, which we will check out first. Hello, Adrian. Here are the C64 boards. I really hope you can repair at least some. That's right, Henning has sent me more Commodore 64 motherboards, just the motherboards. So that'll be perfect for a little repair-a-thon. A box with some other C64 goodies is also included. Perhaps you can find out if the EPROMs still work. I think they are alternative ROMs for the C64. Keep up the good work, and thank you for the entertainment, Henning. Thank you, Henning. Very nice letter. Let's take a look at these boards that came all the way from Germany. Of course, hi to all my German viewers. Look at that. Some nice German sweets here. Looks like it's hazelnut caramel with nougat and I don't know, can't read what my last word is. Okay, so this is chocked full of parts. This is amazing. All right, so first thing is 1541 disk drive board. Oh wow, he has just sent me so many boards. This is amazing. All right, I've unpacked everything and there's an amazing selection of boards here. So we have 2 short boards, and what's extra cool is he included the VIC-2 chips. And the great thing for me is that the VIC-2 chips are the one part that here in North America you just can't find. These are all going to be PAL boards, of course, and the fact that the VIC-2 chips are on here is amazing. I actually don't have a single short board with the later VIC-2 chip in PAL. I only have a couple VIC-2 chips that are for the earlier boards like this type, that are the PAL type. None of these have SID chips, but that's totally fine. Those chips are super high demand and super failure prone anyways. And I luckily, if you've seen some of my previous videos, have been able to get some of those from China, from AliExpress. I actually got good ones. Some of them didn't work so well. What was it? I think they all worked, but I had one that was sent to me from a viewer maybe that didn't. Either way, I have a good number of those chips that still work, which is great. So I can bring back some of these boards. Then I have 3 of these short boards, which are the earlier type that has a separate color RAM chip right here. And then we have one of these types, which is the 25407, the most common motherboard style in the US here. I have tons of these and I've worked on tons of these. And then this is the box that he was saying has some random chips in here. Let's just see what we can find. Anything in this? Nope. All right, yeah, 6526, that's excellent. Those are kind of hard to find now. That's the I/O chip for the 64. And here's another 6526. And actually, you know what though? This one here is the A variant, which I think means it comes from a 1571 disk drive. And these do not work in place of a regular 6526. They're like a cheapened version or something, or it's missing some functionality that keeps it from working on the computer. But it would be used to fix a disk drive if one of those goes bad. And then there are some EPROMs. This is what he was talking about. And he thinks that they're in adapters, socket adapters that someone handmade. I've done that before. So these could well be 64 kernel ROMs or basic ROMs or something like that. And yeah, that's it. So before we check this out on the bench, I'm just gonna try this candy here. I think when it's just a single candy item, as opposed to a bunch, I will test it out here on the main channel in the unboxing. I would like to add that I absolutely love hazelnuts. I think that's delicious. Ooh, these are really cool looking. One side is a light brown, sort of harder chocolate or the hazelnut, and the other side is dark chocolate or darker. That was amazing. That tasted really, really good. So that's an up-close picture of the box there. And there's the back. All right, so thanks Henny for sending this stuff in. Let's go take a look at this on the bench. See which ones of these work and which don't. I am ready to start testing the motherboards from Henning. I have some post-it notes with a Sharpie because I'm going to be marking them up just with the quick testing results. Dead test cartridge, little pointer here so I can point at things on the motherboard. I have my chip lifter and the chip remover because I may want to just take out a quick chip or two for quick testing, things like that. Also have my magnifying goggles since I can't really see close up, but that enables me to do that. So let's get started. All right, here's the first motherboard. So this is a short board, obviously. It's one of the later versions because the PLA, which is this chip right here, has the color RAM built in. Otherwise there'd be a little chip, I can't remember, one of the two sides of it. Sometimes when boards are stored and just sort of stacked up, it ends up pushing some of the components down and you can end up getting shorts on the capacitors, or pins can get bent like these three pins here. They're not touching, but they are mighty close to each other. So I just like to spend a moment to straighten out all the components and double check nothing is shorted. And then just a quick look to see what has been reworked. Okay, that is unbelievably ugly. And I have to say, right here, this looks burned there and there. But what happened? This is just so sad. So there's a good chance this is not going to work and has to do with this. The rest of the back of the board looks totally fine. So I'm going to call this motherboard number 1. And before I do any kind of testing on here, I have to install one of these chips here. It's the clock generator. This particular motherboard type uses it. I took this off a working motherboard, so I know it is good. And let's just hook this thing up. I'm completely not expecting it to work right off the bat, especially with this horrible socket here. But let's see what happens. Okay, we got a picture here, but it's just a black screen, which is totally understandable. So in with the dead test cartridge. And honestly, out with this horribleness right here because I don't know what's going on. And having that chip in there, certainly not going to help anything. What did they do? It's like I think one of the pins on here got soldered in. Okay, that chip is okay, but what a disaster that socket is. Okay, let's see what happens with dead test in there. We got a light on there. Oh, we're getting flashing, and I just noticed that the RAM is missing. Someone took the RAM out of this thing. So, all right. Well, the flashing is a good sign. That means that the machine is trying to work, but the RAM is missing. So I'm just gonna write no RAM, no 8701. It has no SID, and it has a damaged socket. For fixing this thing, at the minimum, new socket, plus I gotta check the traces there to see nothing's damaged, and reinstall the RAM. And there's a good chance this thing might work. Okay, here is Henning number 2. This motherboard is a 250-425, a type that I rather like. It's actually got the 8701 installed. It has MT RAM, so right off the bat, that right there is probably what's wrong with this. And as I talk, I'm just straightening up these bent over capacitors, checking for any that have shorted. Essentially, everything on this motherboard except for the SID and the VIC-2 and the A701 are soldered right onto the board. So if there's a problem with the PLA, for instance, it'll require removing that, but no big deal for me. But more difficult for a novice who doesn't have good desoldering skills. I can tell this had some kind of, I don't know what's going on here, something soldered onto there. Almost never, I've actually never seen an RF shield around this, so I don't know what these two marks are. Unlike the number 2, this board does not have any rework done. Or if anything was reworked on here, whoever did the work did an excellent job and they hid their traces because it looks factory fresh, this entire board. A bunch of the pins on the keyboard connector are bent. and a couple were touching each other. So I am just straightening them out, not perfectly, but at least so they're not shorting out. I think this board is ready for quick testing. Power is off. Plug the power in, plug in the video. Just checking that both of these chips are oriented the correct way in the sockets, and they are. I broke out the multimeter just for quick testing on the voltage rails on this thing, because if these things are bad, of course we might have issues. So I'm turning this on, quickly check these. 11.8 is good. 4.92 is fine. Now the weird thing is there's absolutely no video signal coming out of this thing at all. I'm just going to quickly check the main 5-volt rail, and yep, we're getting 5 volts. So that's not a problem. Oh, you know what? When this happens, when total death happens, it could well be the 8701. That is a complete symptom of this little chip being dead. And believe me, that MOS chip, it dies. So I pop in my known good one, turn it back on, and we're still getting absolutely nothing, which means I suspect that the VIC is probably bad on here, but we will leave that for further testing. Just gonna put it back to the original 8701. So I'm gonna write on here, V-rails, good. No video at all. Tried new 8701. So one very dead Commodore 64. Let's move on to number 3. Okay, we have number 3. This is the super common 250-407. Unlike the other two boards we just looked at, this does not use the 8701. It just uses these 4 ICs. Has a PAL VIC-2 in here, 6569R4. This board appears to be in pretty good shape. Just a few things are sort of folded over, but I'm not seeing massive kind of folding over. So hopefully that means we don't have any shorts. Everything is soldered. It does not use MT RAM. Let's quickly take a look at the back for any evidence of rework. It's very, very clean on the back, so definitely no rework has happened here. I am ready for quick testing on the voltage regulator, so let's plug this in. Plug in the video cable, and here we go. Okay, actually, well, it's 12.0 there, which is fine. And we're getting 5.01 there, which is fine. But we have a working 64 already. Not totally working, but nearly working. The color is flickering like crazy, which means pretty much there's a problem with the color RAM. The PLA could be problematic, although I'm suspecting it's just the color RAM, or it could be some of the decoding, or these ICs here which connect the color RAM to the VIC-2. Could be the VIC-2 as well. Could be numerous things. But we have a flashing cursor on the screen here, and that definitely indicates that this machine is actually running. Because this machine is mostly working, I'll stick in the diagnostic cartridge. I switched it over from dead test to the standard one. Let's just see what that does. Come on. I'm struggling to get it into the cartridge slot here. I really need to get a cartridge that has an actual case around it, so it's easier to put in there. And I'll need a separate one for dead test and one for standard. So there's the test is running. It all looks good except for the colors. This indicates that the two 6526s are working. RAM test is all good. Let's see what it says for color RAM. I'm sure that's going to fail. Color RAM. Oh, PLA actually says bad, and it's froze on the color RAM. That doesn't necessarily mean that the PLA is the faulty part. It could be the color RAM that's bad. But I don't know. It's probably the PLA. So I'm going to write on here, diags work, flashing colors. Well, that's kind of cool that this thing mostly works. So yeah, some hopefully simple fixes, but you never know, might be a complicated one. Okay, here we go. This is machine number 4. We have a short board. The 8701 is installed. This has the RAM actually on the board as well. And this is the later short board that has the color RAM integrated into the PLA. Everything is soldered on here except for the VIC, the 8701, and the SID, which has been removed. I'm going to spend a moment and straighten out some of the components, checking for anything that might be shorted. Okay, on the top of the board, everything else looks fine, and on the bottom, looks good. Don't see any evidence of rework. So let's plug it in, power it up. All right, here we go. Okay, getting a black screen. That implies that the VIC is probably working, and so is the 8701. Without the 8701, you get completely nothing, like no video whatsoever. Let's pop in the dead test. Let that run for a second. While I do, I'll just update the note. Black screen. Looks like we are dead in the water, even with the dead test cartridge in there. Oh wait, I don't have dead test configured. This is configured for the other type of diagnostic. This is why I really need to get 2 cartridges so I don't keep switching these silly switches. Just leave that in the dead test mode. Okay, so even with the dead test in, it's just a black screen. We have the vertical line, which shows that the VIC is kind of working, but everything else appears totally dead. So I'm going to write with and without dead test. No SID. I should have written this on the previous ones, but I forgot. Okay, so machine number 4. Some signs of life. Ooh. What is really hot? Something. Oh, the RAM. Burning hot RAM. Right there. I bet you the RAM is bad on this thing. Wow. Those are hot chips. Let's quickly check what else is hot. Everything else is fine. These are Texas Instrument RAM chips. I have seen this exact problem on a shortboard where the RAM was burning hot, and that was the problem. I need to write that on here. I should have left more space. Burning up RAM. This one may be an easy fix once I do the repair-a-thon for these motherboards. Let's go on to number 5. All right, here is board number 5. Quick look, see definitely capacitors that have been smushed. The LED connector here is also smushed and sideways, so this thing obviously was stacked with a bunch of stuff, as has been the previous motherboards. This one is completely soldered, except for the usual candidates here. This is the slightly older of the shortboards, because there is the color RAM, a separate IC. 8701 is installed. Right away, I noticed that this capacitor here has had its legs ripped out. So obviously this was stacked with something quite heavy, enough that it pulled that right out of the board. So I'm gonna have to replace that. Looks like it's leaked onto the board too. I'm just gonna clip this capacitor off the board entirely, and then I'll just clip on a temporary capacitor onto here, because you do sort of need these even for rudimentary testing. So some of the electrolyte leaked out on the board when it got kind of ripped out, so I'll just use a bit of alcohol to clean this up. It's not too bad, the damage, but it definitely did cause a little bit of damage. This is 470 microfarads. While just looking around and straightening things out, I noticed right off the bat that there's a diode here that's broken off. CR13, so I'll note that on here for future repairs. Some of these caps should probably be changed. Like this one over here, it was very wobbly. I think it was bent over a little too much. It's probably fine right now though for testing. And on the back of the board, everything looks great. I don't see any evidence of molestation. Okay, bad CR13 and C66, which is this capacitor right here, which I just have a temporary one clipped on. 8701 appears to be installed correctly, as does the VIC2. So here we go. Let's put the power to it and the video connector. Let's see what we get. Well, look at that. We actually have seemingly a fully functional Commodore 64. It's not going to completely work because of the bad diode. I think that's probably for the serial maybe, or the cassette port or something like that. And it's quite possible that Henning might have tested it and it didn't work because this capacitor had been ripped off. I don't know what the side effect of having a dead cap is there, but hey, somewhat functional. So I'm gonna write boots, no SID, needs more test. I just wanted to point out how this got corroded a little bit from that cap that leaked little spots and stuff in the copper there. Anyhow, that is cool that one of these just works and just needs a little further testing. Of course, with the full diagnostic harness, other problems may be revealed. Most likely that's probably the case, even once I fix these minor issues. But yeah, cool. Okay, number 5 mostly works. How about number 6? Here is number 6. This one has the VIC and the 8701 installed. Everything else is soldered. It's just like everyone we've been looking at. I feel like a broken record here. This is the earlier of the short boards because there's the color RAM. This one doesn't appear to be too smushed. Some components are smushed, but most are actually okay. I see one pin here. One of the keyboard pins is actually shorting, so we'll just fix that really quickly. There we go. Let's take a quick look at the back. I'd say this. What's going on right here? There's a little bit of something. I don't know. That's just a drop of something. I don't think any rework has happened here. It's just weird how there's sort of a blob of flux or something right there. Otherwise, yeah, this thing looks pretty factory. I forgot to mark this. It's number 6. Plug in the power. I'm just checking that the VIC-2 is in correctly and it's the right version, and it is. It's an 8000. If it was a 6000 version in this board, it wouldn't damage it, but just wouldn't work properly. If you put this one into a long board without modifying the board, it will damage the VIC-2 chip. Okay, power this on. Oh, the power switch. The power switch is jammed. Okay, well, I don't want to force it, so we're going to write on here, bad power switch. No SID. Let me just give this one more try before I give up on testing. Yeah, this thing is just stuck. I'm going to try to pop off the little black cover here, which is doable. There we go. I popped off the little black cover, and now we can see the little brass part of the switch there. Oh, well, I think I just broke my fingernail. Yep, I think this switch is toast. It is moving now, but it will not stay in the up position. It just flips right back down. No continuity. Yep, the switch is totally dead. So I'm gonna have to completely replace that switch. No problem. I have parts boards. All right, so machine number 6, bad power switch. I could do further testing by jumping the switch and whatever, but that will be for further testing in a repair-a-thon. For now, we're gonna leave this. This board may totally work, for all I know, once it gets a new power switch. And we have the last board from Henning, and this is number 7. It is the same style of shortboard as the last one. It does have the ROM in a socket, so we'll have to look to see if that's been reworked. Has the color RAM external to the PLA. 8701 is installed. The correct VIC-2 is installed. This machine is missing the fuse, but otherwise looks okay. Not too many smushed components. Oh, wait, actually, look at this capacitor here. Look how scratched up that is. So that was taking the brunt of a bunch of stuff being piled on top of it. All these caps over here are a bit wobbly because they were obviously pushed down. No broken diodes here. These all look okay. These caps here are a bit bent over. So are these. But everything looks fine. I don't see anything shorted. What about on the back? Yep, so that ROM right there, that was definitely reworked by someone. It's not great quality. Doesn't look totally broken, but I'm definitely going to suspect that that is a problem. So I'm going to put on here, just because I noticed it now, the ROM has been replaced. It's got no SID. Power switch, that does work. And of course it's got no fuse. But otherwise it looks okay. How about I just borrow the fuse off this number 6 board? Okay, so let's give this thing a test. Just checking that these are in correctly, and they are. So is the ROM. Okay, here we go. Okay, we got a semi-working machine. Nice. It's very flickery, but that could well be this very sketchy work done here. Let's put in the cartridge. This is set for dead test, because that will disable the ROM. In fact, I can just pull this out if it doesn't immediately work. All right, we have a picture. Doesn't look great though. It's got sort of the color working, but we have no text. Let's pull this ROM out of here. I have a feeling the problem is not this ROM, might be that ROM, which is the character generator. Yeah, no change. Okay, well anyways, it could well be that, but this is worth writing down. So it's definitely booting. It just has no ability to display any characters. So I'm writing boots, no chars, no characters basically. Dead test. My writing is so bad here. It has lines. I can see on the dead test, the RAM test is running right now. So this thing, it seems to be completely running normally. It seems to be the VIC's ability to access character ROM or RAM is the problem. Dead test doesn't use the character ROM at all. Either way, it's not working, but when you boot this up without the dead test, it's very flickery and messed up looking, and that's kind of what you get on a regular 64 if you just take the character ROM out entirely. I'm pretty sure on the short boards, I'm not as familiar with these because I haven't worked on so many. I only have 1 or maybe 2 of them. This ROM I just took out is basic and the kernel ROM combined, and that's why we're getting a black screen right now. But when I put this back in, the machine does boot, but this ROM chip right here, which was replacing one of the other ones, that's the character ROM. Maybe it's failed and it's messing up the bus somehow, or it could be the VIC is bad as well. In fact, just for fun, I am going to take the VIC out of this number 6 machine here, and I'm going to pop it into there, and we'll just see if that makes any difference at all. Looks like someone's already had the original VIC out of this thing. I'm just going to put Deoxit in the socket because it was a little dry feeling. Okay. Now, I don't know if this VIC actually works. This came out of the one with a bad power switch, so completely untested. But let's just see if we get the similar results. Yes, and we do. It's exactly the same. So I'm going to say that that VIC is not the problem. All right, so there we go. That's number 7. I am going to put the fuse back in the previous one, and I'm going to put its VIC back in there as well. So machine number 7, it's kind of running, but it has that problem with the characters. So that'll be an interesting fix, especially because I'm not super familiar with these short boards on where the problem might lie. They're very reliable, these boards. All right, so for testing this little box of chips that Henning sent, I'm going to use the TheC64, which should enable us to test at least some of these chips. Quick test of the machine before I do anything, because I want to make sure that this thing is working as a known good state, and there it is. It does work fine. We have a 6526A, a 6526A-1, and then a regular 6526, and then another 6526A. And this little foam block here has 7406s. Just going off the top of my head, I think these are open collector, and they are used typically in Commodore IEC bus. So like on the 1541, there should be one of these. Now, I might be totally off base, but that's what I'm remembering. The foam that these are stuck into is really falling apart. So these chips have been stuck in this foam for a very long time. And these here are the EPROMs. One of them says SPEZI Comp U4. And there's the custom-made adapters on the bottom. First things first, I'd like to test the 6526s. Just spend a moment to bend the pins back into position from who knows how many years of storage in a random place. Since I'm putting this into a ZIF socket, They don't have to be perfectly straight, but enough that they will fit into here. So there we go. I am not sure about the A versions. I wonder if the A versions are just the ones that work on the Commodore 128 at 2 megahertz, for instance. Let's turn this on and see what happens. Testing 1, 2, 3. Spacebar is not working, nor is the 1 key. Did I mess up something with the connection here? Nope. Just checking to see if any of the pins are severely bent, and no, they're not. This could just be an issue in the ZIF socket. These are not legitimate ZIFs. I got them from AliExpress. So they don't have the best contact on the pins sometimes. Yep, no change. All right, so this chip might be bad. Let's just test out the other -A chip. Make sure that it works better than this one. And it does. 1 and spacebar are working. I inserted the diagnostic cartridge and I plugged in the keyboard test header onto this machine. This is a more comprehensive way to make sure that these chips are actually working. All right, well, let's say my PLA is bad. I'm not sure what's going on. Lots of bads on here, but the keyboard is reporting as good, which implies that this particular chip actually works properly. So I'm gonna draw a tick mark on that. And I'm gonna put back in this original one where a couple of the keys didn't seem to work correctly on it. And indeed, keyboard is bad on the first one I tried that doesn't have working keys. So that one gets an X marked on it. Next chip I'm going to plug in and test is this one from 1984, 6526. This one, the pins are relatively mangled. This was definitely, oh, made in Thailand. This was definitely desoldered from a board, which means it's kind of suspect. Who would desolder a good chip from a board unless the whole board was broken? That's a bit unusual. I guess I wouldn't do that and not leave it in the machine, that is. All right, here we go. Oh, I stand corrected. Keyboard is okay on this one. Sweet. So this one gets a tick mark. And that leaves us with this one, A-1 from 1986. I am pretty sure that this is from a disk drive. I don't know what actually happens if you try to use one of these in a Commodore 64, but let's find out. At least the computer boots up okay. Well, interesting. It does say keyboard is okay. So can you use the -1s successfully in the 64, at least in the keyboard position? Let me plug the keyboard back in to see if I can actually type correctly. Hello, this is a test. It seems to be working okay, at least as a keyboard controller, so that's good. Okay, so looking at these EPROM adapters, I'm just trying to figure out what these might be. They all appear to be wired up basically the same way. One thing I'm noticing though, is this chip on the right is in backwards. This one on the left here, the notch is up here, which lines up with the notch on the socket. And when I flip it over, I see the way it's wired up. That is definitely in there correctly. This chip on the other hand, it's wired up exactly the same way. These two are done the same way, but the chip is in backwards. So before testing anything, I'm gonna pop this thing out of here and I'll reinsert this. So this chip is a 2764, as is this one, which is basically the same size as the kernel ROM that's on here. And this one that says Speed DOS is also a 2764. So let's pop out this EPROM. This is Jiffy DOS. And then I need to straighten these legs because they won't go into my sockets. Okay, will this turn on and do anything? Oh, it does work. Look at this. SPEZI system, it says. And it's working. What's the SPEZI system? Let's see if it's got does have some F key shortcuts. Not sure what that one does. Well, I'm not sure exactly what this does, but as you see, it boots up just fine. Now, this is not the one that was in backwards, because the backwards one may already be damaged. That was this one right here. This one should be a little easier to get in. Let's give this a try. Okay, there we go. If we get a black screen, that chip has been shorted out and killed. Yeah, we're getting nothing. Probably got inserted into the computer backwards, which always kills the EPROMs. They don't survive that. And then let's try out Speed DOS. And it says U4, which is the kernel socket. So that's a good sign that this is exactly where it belongs inside the 64, a little stack there. And there we are, Speed DOS Plus for the 64. I assume this has got similar, you know what, these have the same function key shortcuts as that SPEZI DOS or that other one with the rainbow colors. So they must be derivatives of each other. Okay, so I put the chip that wasn't working in the EPROM reader here, the TL866. Let's just give a quick read. I don't think the chip is working. It's giving an ID error. And it reads back as all FF. Okay, I just loaded something random into the buffer. Let's try to program this. Yep, right there, it's automatically failing. So it tries to write to it and it just gets back FF. That's exactly what happens when one of these gets damaged by putting it in backwards. So I put back in the ROM chip that says SPEZI system, and I'm doing a little Googling. I can't seem to find any mention of this anywhere. Because these chips and all the stuff that Henning sent came from Germany, it's most likely something that might be on the German language site about the 64. So if any of my German viewers are watching and they recognize SPEZI system, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, please let me know about that in the comment section below. I can always dump this ROM out and upload that to archive.org or whatever if this is something that needs to be preserved. And now, since these two ICs are bad, here's the dead parts bin. Let's flip this up. Get these bad chips in there. So that is it for these machines. So we have number 7 that has that weird character problem, number 6 that has a bad power switch. We have number 5, which, what's wrong with this one? It does boot, it needs more testing, so this one mostly works. We have number 4 that shows video, like it's a black screen with a line, so I know it's doing video generation, but it doesn't do anything else. But the RAM is burning up. So when it's time for repair, the first thing I'll do there is yank that RAM out of there. And then we have number 3 that boots into BASIC, but has the flashing colors, all the text, and the diagnostics do start, and they give flashing colors as well, and it fails on the PLA test, and also says the color RAM is bad, I think. Maybe it just said the PLA was bad and froze at that point. And then we have number 2, which has good voltage rails, but totally dead for the video at all. I did test a new 8701, so I know that's not the problem. So most likely it's either the VIC or the RF modulator is dead in this thing or has a bad connection. And then we have number 1, which has no RAM and no 8701, no SID of course, and this socket over here is very damaged. So I'll have to replace that socket, install some RAM, and maybe the machine will work at that point. Henning also included this, which is a 1541 disk drive controller, and this is the short version of that from those drives. Maybe when I do the repair-a-thon of these machines, I can hook this up to a drive mechanism and we can see if this thing works as well. So there we go. Thank you very much, Henning, for sending all this stuff in. It's totally awesome, especially the fact that all of these have VIC-2 chips, which here in North America, the PAL versions are super rare. And with that, I'm gonna end this video here. Big thanks to Henning for sending in all those boards. Some very interesting faults on those, so it will be cool to do a repair-a-thon, especially because I am very inexperienced at fixing the short boards. I can't give an ETA on when the repair-a-thon will happen, but it will happen in the future, and I use all the notes that I just took to help me with the repair-a-thon, just like I did on the last one. So I want to thank all my patrons. Their names are scrolling up the side of the screen here. If you want to become a patron yourself, there's a link down in the description so you can do so there. I'd love a subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and a thumbs up would be great if you like this video, plus comments always help as well. And don't forget to check out my second channel because there's lots of interesting videos there, and a subscribe there would really help as well. And I guess that is it. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.